What an exciting couple of days in Montreal. Of course, Kent Hughes made a splash on Thursday night, selecting Slafkovsky with the number 1 pick, trading Alexander Romanov to the New York Islanders, acquiring center Kirby Dach from the Chicago Blackhawks, drafting a Slovak right winger with their 2nd pick, and of course, there was a very busy day on Friday. I recap it all with former Montreal Canadiens scout. Many of you have an apology to offer this guy. That's why I'm bringing him on. Quite frankly, after the abuse that he's taken for the last 3 or 4 months, especially on social media, I think he deserves a pat on the back and maybe even a little publicity. Why not? We'll give it to him right here on the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro. Usually, when I get talk, I get paid. That's right. Grant McCagg is coming up of recrutes.ca. When he sells publications, he gets paid too.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Sports entertainment like no other. Brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.
All right, and welcome. It is the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro. We'll recap the Habs draft. And usually on weekends, I usually go with a bruncheon with Marinaro. It's usually on Sunday mornings. Sometimes it's on Saturdays. But the programming is a little bit different this weekend, of course, because the Canadiens had their draft on Thursday and on Friday, and we felt we had to recap it. So here we are on Saturday night, just past 5 o'clock. Brought to you by 8.6 Beer. Intense by nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark, and brought to you by La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was a couple of days ago for the Sick Podcast draft party, well, I'm sure you absolutely loved it, and you'll be going back to La Cage pretty soon, huh? And the menu will no longer surprise you if you checked it out on Thursday. The menu is absolutely fantastic. I love La Cage. All right, okay, so let's go. And I love Slafkovsky, and I know that Grant McCagg of recrutes.ca does as well. Grant joined us just over a week ago, and he told us that his number 1 pick was Slafkovsky, and he gave us a bunch of reasons why. Well, he can pat himself on the back. He's not the only one who loved him. Clearly, the Montreal Canadiens did too. We bring Grant back. Grant, what's going on?
Hey, all pretty happy, Tony.
So now you and I have talked several times. We had a chance to meet for the first time in person on Thursday. And let's be honest, I'm better looking in public, eh?
Oh, Tony.
And in person?
There's no match.
Thank you. What do you think of my eyes?
Mesmerizing.
And the curly hair? All right, okay, enough of that. Listen, it's you that deserves the props, Grant, for just right after the Winter Olympics when Slafkovsky stepped up and scored 7 goals in 7 games and was the tournament MVP. You've been telling us ever since that moment that he's your number 1 guy for the 2022 NHL Amateur Draft. You took a lot of heat on social media because a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans, a lot of them really wanted Shane Wright to be the guy, and they didn't like what you were selling because they wanted to silence you, because if you would say that, A, they thought you were hurting the kid, and B, they thought you could probably influence some people. I don't know if you influenced some people, but he was the number 1 pick, Grant.
Well, I wanted to influence Habs fans and let them know that, you know, there were other dogs in the race. I certainly don't think I influenced any NHL teams. I mean, you know, I don't think they listen to me, but I mean, you know, some people maybe understandably think I went overboard on being negative about Wright, and it just sort of built, you know. I'd say something, then people would, respond negatively. I would say something else, and it did get, it did get a little negative, and that's the unfortunate part about it is when you're doing a draft list, there's a guy that's kind of thought to be the first overall. Like I went through the exact same thing with Nolan Patrick. I remember in his draft year, in November, I saw Hischier play a couple of games one weekend, and he blew me away, and Patrick wasn't blowing me away. And I put Hischier first overall before anyone else did publicly. And it was very similar heat. But this time, because I'm more connected with the Canadiens and a lot of my followers are Habs fans, it was like 10 times. So, it was a little tough to take, but I just stopped reading my comments, basically.
Grant, the alarm bells went off for you in terms of you were no longer sold. When exactly on Shane Wright? And what were those things that for you just couldn't get out of your head and you said, I'm concerned about what I'm seeing?
Well, it was every live view that I had in Ottawa. I don't know if, Ottawa wasn't a great team, but for whatever reasons, I think maybe a few of the games were on Sundays, and it was the second or third game that he played that weekend. Perhaps that had something to do with it, and his legs were a little rubbery, but he was not coming back on the back check at all. Like, I had never seen a prospect in his draft year that just, never came back hard on the back check. And I know that's, a lot of people say, well, that's old school. He was just laying in the bushes and, waiting for his offensive opportunities. But when the other team has the puck and they're going down the ice, Tony, did you see any centers that were sitting back at the blue line and not coming back? I mean, that's their job, to get back in the slot, to cover passes that are coming in, to get back on the back check, and he wasn't doing it. So I made note of it. Other scouts saw the same thing, and we were really concerned about his lack of effort away from the puck.
And, obviously you're not going to say this, but what a lot of people don't know, and, maybe they'll find out now, is that when you're watching games, you're a former scout, you're still connected with a lot of people in the game. You're watching games with scouts. You're not alone in your corner. You're watching games with scouts. You're sharing opinions with each other, and it's possible. We don't have to go there, but it's possible that there was one or two occasions where you probably maybe even watched a game when a Montreal Canadiens scout was in the building.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Trevor was still with the team, for the start of the year, and we watched a couple of games together, and Trevor wasn't liking what he was seeing from Wright either. At one point he said to me, when he went to a game after he got let go, and he was still going to some games, he said, I wouldn't want to be making the first pick overall this year, which was kind of it was kind of funny because the Canadiens ended up having the first pick, and of course it was the first draft in 19 years that Trevor wasn't running.
What did you think of when the Canadiens talked about Slafkovsky? They talked about he was confident in a good and humble way, right? Did you hear that remark? It was something like that, right? That he had like a good confidence to him. It was kind of like a humble confidence. And the reason why I say that is because talking with someone earlier today, they were sharing a story with me that they were talking with an agent a couple of days ago, and they were saying that maybe Shane wasn't counseled as well as he should have been, because his comment of, he wanted to be the number one pick and he deserved to be the number one pick. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. Okay. I think I like that. I want to be the number one pick. I deserve to be the number one pick. I'm the number one player. I kind of like that, to tell you the truth. I mean, I kind of talk like that, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I don't like that. That's kind of me, to tell you the truth. But, when Slafkovsky was asked about, if he felt he deserved to be the number one pick, he said he didn't care. All he wanted was that when his career was over, he ended up being the best player from that draft class. And, a lot of people have said that they kind of like that answer more than the answer that Shane Wright gave.
Well, when I saw that tweet, I quoted and said, that's a better answer than I deserve to be number one. Even though I'm like you, Tony, I didn't, that comment didn't bother me that much because he's been probably asked that question 100 times. And one time he didn't answer it the way everyone wanted him to. I tend to give him a bit of a break on that one, because he's asked that. He must have been asked the same question 100 times, throughout the year. And to take that one comment and to, magnify it to the extremes that people did. I mean, you got to take it in context. Yeah. And, he's a good kid. Like, I don't have anything bad. I haven't said anything bad about his character all year. He interviewed well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything because I don't know anything negative about his character.
Yeah.
So.
I met him on Wednesday at the Montreal Science Center, both Wright and Slafkovsky. I got to tell you, I immediately was drawn to both kids. I think they're both great kids. They're both different. They have different characters. They have different personalities. The one thing that I noticed, and I'll share this, is that, once again, Shane Wright has been told that he's the best 2004 hockey player in the world, probably for at least 4 years, right? Maybe even 5, who knows, right? And so he's been counseled, obviously, and he's been trained, and he's been taught how to deal with the media, how to talk, how to speak, what to say, when to say it, how to say it. And Slafkovsky was never ranked the number one guy until, you came out with it in your publication and Bob McKenzie came out with it in his publication type of thing, right? Sure. So one's been touted as the number one guy for like 5 years, and the other one's been touted as the number one guy for 1 month. And and I thought in talking to both of them is that Wright's answers sounded kind of like rehearsed, like he was counseled, like he was taught, like somebody told him what to say. And Slafkovsky came around as someone who probably didn't need to be counseled because he was probably nowhere near going first overall a year ago, and that it seems so much more fluid and so much more natural. Did you get that impression too? You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly. And like when you were saying about, that being rehearsed or whatever, I think after he said that comment, Wright said that comment that, some scouts didn't like it. I mean, I had a scout send me a meme of it, with the I deserve and saying, what is this, So there were scouts that were turned off by that comment. I won't deny it. But I think he got some counseling after that, and being coached what to say, don't say that again. This is what you say, right?
But like I said, I really liked the kid. I really liked Shane Wright. I really liked Slafkovsky too.
Yeah.
I spent some good time with them on Wednesday morning. I really did. And, if I ever talked to Wright or I would talk to his people or his handlers, I would tell him at one point he was talking so fast that he kind of got he stuttered a bit because he was he jammed up a little bit. Sure. And I would just kind of like, when I started off in the business, I tried to talk real fast and I tried to sound like other people before me. And I quickly realized, or at one point I realized, this is not me. And I just changed and I became myself. And somebody told me, just relax and just be yourself. And when I did, I was better. And I think with time, he's going to become more himself. And he's going to be really good. As a matter of fact, although it was hard to see him slip in the draft, and I said this before the other day, I'm really happy for the kid because I think Seattle's a great spot for him. You know what? They're going to eat all the time in the world to develop. He'll play with Matty Beniers. There'll be a 1-2 combination at center probably for 10 plus years. He'll play under the guidance of Ron Francis, who, by the way, in the times that I've seen Wright play, he's reminded me a lot of Ron Francis. All right. And just, I don't know. It's a great fan base. They got great owners. I mean, Arizona's a tougher spot, like it's Seattle, I think, is going to be great for him. But anyway, it's done.
If you don't mind me commenting on
Of
that,
course.
I agree 100%, Tony. And, as it ends up, like there would have been pressure on him as a number 1 pick to be better than Suzuki, right? Who was number 12. Well, this way now, he goes to Seattle, an expansion team. They won't be, they won't be expected to win for at least a couple of years to start to win. So there'll be no pressure that way. But also, Beniers is a number 2 pick, right? And he's a number 4 pick. So there won't be that pressure even in Seattle for him to be better than Beniers.
That's a great point.
All he's got to be is the second best center on that team. And I mean, I think the pressure is lifted off his shoulders immensely.
Now, what's the pressure going to be like for Uri Slafkovsky? Is he going to have to be the best winger on the team, or because he went first overall, do you think there's going to be a pressure and an expectation that he has to be the best player on the team?
Well, already got a pretty good winger in Caulfield, so there's a good chance that Cole ends up still scoring more goals than he does, maybe, but he'll be getting lots of assists setting him up. Yeah, sure. I mean, there's going to be some pressure on him, but you heard his comments there. He wants to be the best player from this draft class, and if he ends up being the best player from this draft class, he's probably going to end up being the best player in the Canadiens down the road. So let's hope he can fulfill I think at the very least he's going to be very effective and very good, and I think Canadiens fans will be okay with that because he fills a need in that top 6 as a power forward that we've really needed for a long time. Like Pacioretty was big, but he didn't use his size.
No. We're going to move on. But before we do, I really wanted to touch on this because you've been all over Slafkovsky versus Wright for the last 3 or 4 months, and I thought you deserved this opportunity. But before we do, Kent Hughes said Uri Slafkovsky will play in North America. Where in North America? Laval or the Montreal Canadiens for the upcoming season?
Yeah, well, tournament MVP of the Olympics and top 11 scorer at the World Championships tells me that he'll be playing against the men in the NHL.
All right. A development camp, by the way, opens up tomorrow at Complex Sportif Place Belle in Brossard. And a lot of the Montreal Canadiens young players, of course, are going to be there. There are a couple that are injured, right? Which you pointed out on Twitter, Grant.
Yeah, I don't know if Gooley's injured. As someone pointed out, and I was thinking the same thing. It could be he's going to be off at the World Junior Camp pretty soon, and it might just be a question of we don't need to see what you can do here, kid. We'll let you rest up. But yeah, I don't know why they aren't playing, but the presumption is that it's injury.
Well, for Logan Mailloux, it is, right? You would think.
I guess maybe a shoulder. You'd think it would be healed by now. It's been 8 months or something, or 6 at least, so maybe.
All right, we'll find out more over the next couple of days, but once again, at Complex Sportif Belle in Brossard over the next couple of days. All right, okay. Let's take a look at the Montreal Canadiens picks in the draft. There you have it. Uri Slafkovsky was pick number 1. Pick 26, Philip Mesar. Pick 33, Owen Beck. Pick 62, Lane Hudson. Pick 75, Vincenz Rohrer. Pick 92, Adam Engstrom. Pick 127, Cedric Guindon. Pick 130, Jared Davidson. Pick 162, Emmett Croteau. Pick 194, Petteri Nurmi. And pick 216, Miguel Tourigny. I hope I pronounced them all correctly. You know them better than I do, and this is why you're here today on the Sick Podcast. We're going live on Facebook, live on Twitter, and live on YouTube. By the way, if you love the podcast, just comment sick. It's our way of feeling the love. Let's bring the chart back up, please. As we talk about these players, I don't want the chart to go away. Philip Mesar. I'm going to ask you for a scouting report on every player. Let's go with Mesar.
Yeah, I had them picking Mesar in the mock draft at at 26 actually, and Slafkovsky at 1. So I lucked out on that one. I just had a feeling that they picked the two Slovaks. Mezar's really skilled kid. He's got great edges. He's just a fabulous skater, and I think that he was underrated. Mostly because he's not that big. I think he's 5'10", 184. His size is fine as far as he's got a good build. He's a strong kid. So, and he's played against men all year or most of the year. So and played well. So I think he's already proven that he can handle, the bigger men. He's got the skill. He's very smart, very good puck skills, and he's definitely got second line potential.
He's a right winger. Now on to Owen Beck with the 33rd pick. What can you tell us?
I love the kid. I asked a scouting friend of mine who gets to see the Ontario League quite a bit. He probably watched him 10, 12 times. I asked him where he had him ranked, and he said top 20. So that's obviously where the Canadiens had him ranked too. To pick him at 33, usually, it'd be early 20s at the latest that they'd have him ranked too. So I had him 26. I think he's the best defensive center in this draft class. One of the top 5 skaters, really smart. He's got a great shot too. And I think he ended up not getting top billing offensively. They gave it to Delbel Belus, but a lot of scouts and me included think that he may actually have better offensive skills at the next level than Delbel Belus, that he has a better chance. And that's why he went higher. Yeah. I really love the kid. I think, as one NHL scout said to me, he's a third line center all day, and you hope that he can become a second line center. Now, with them picking up Kirby Dach to go with Suzuki, the odds that he's going to be better than both aren't great, but or either of them. But I mean, if he is, then that means he turned into a heck of a player.
Yeah, thanks for giving us their position as well. Pick 62, Lane Hutson.
Yeah, well, that's a favorite for a lot of Habs fans. I knew, there were a lot of people that were hoping that he'd maybe go at the 33rd pick. So they were elated when. A lot of people thought he might go top 30, but it wasn't NHL scouts that I knew. 5'8" defenseman, you can't name one in the NHL, right? So yeah. You have to be pretty darn dynamic to make it. It's a long shot for him, but there's a need there. He's certainly going to be an AHL power play quarterback, and if you can put on the requisite muscle, learn to defend a little more physically, you never know. Maybe down the road he ends up being on the Canadiens power play. You kind of shelter him a bit on the third pairing maybe, but use him in power play in offensive situations. That the kid's smart and got just one of the smartest players in the draft. Great instincts. He's like a 5'8" version of Adam Fox almost, but maybe a little better skater.
Yeah, I read somewhere, I think, that at one point he may have had a bone disease, which has impeded his size. But that seems to be, taken care of, and there's still some hope that he can still grow a little bit.
Yeah, I don't, kids that are 17, 18, I know I didn't grow. Did you grow at that age?
Yeah, no, I didn't either.
You're done, you're done growing, especially us shorter guys, Yeah. You're 5'8" or 5'9" when you're 17, 18. You're not 6 feet when you're 20.
The 75th pick. Talk to us about Vinzenz Rohrer.
Yeah, I got to see him a lot playing in Ottawa. So, they were basically my home team. So he actually went head-to-head against Wright just about in all of their meetings. He came in as a rookie from Austria, and it was the first line center on the 67s. He's very smart, very competitive. Skill level's not bad, but I think he can get a little faster and a little bigger He doesn't turn 18 until September. So those are always interesting picks because, you know, if he was a week away and he's not eligible till next year's draft. So
Yeah.
there could be a growth spurt there yet. And, you know, if he gets faster, certainly with his smarts and with his competitiveness, that's a nice package.
A shout out to matrixhomefitness.ca. And, of course, bring it home, discover a club quality workout in the comfort of your own home. Visit matrixhomefitness.ca. I know Agnello brought home the elliptical. I brought home the treadmill, and I also got the rower as well. Absolutely loving it. So is the missus. All right, pick 92, Adam Engstrom.
Yeah, I have a few scouting friends that liked Adam quite a bit. He was at a couple of events there that they saw, and he caught their eye, and he played really well in the Swedish Junior League. A big defenseman with good skating skills. I mean, the Canadiens are loaded at defense, so, you know, if he does make them at some point, it'll be a few years away, that's for sure, because the Canadiens just, I mean, on their depth chart on defense right now, he'd probably be about 20, you know. But, I mean, hey, you got to pick someone, and these are all assets, right? If he develops as they hope, whether he, you know, even if he's not good enough for the Canadiens lineup, there'll be a team out there that wants him, that's for sure.
So now, look, I know that, you know, in the history of the National Hockey League, players that have gone in the 5th round and the 6th round, some of them have been absolute gems. So I don't want to discredit Guindon or Davidson or Croteau or Nurmi or even Tourigny, who was drafted with the 216th pick. But out of all these names, I mean, is there one of them that you think can surprise along the way?
Yeah, I made a top 30 under 23 list on the, you know, Canadians, players that are prospects or players in the NHL. And I mean, you know, the guys from pick 127 on aren't on the list, right? Like, they're outside the top 30 as far as under 23 players. So, I mean, it'll be tough for them for sure. But that's a pleasant problem for the Canadiens to have. They have, you know, they haven't had that problem for 30 years, you know?
Yeah.
I love Jared Davidson. I watched Seattle a lot because they had two kids that I ended up ranking in the top 40. One of them went top 8, was top 10 anyway, was Korchinski. So I watched I think I watched Seattle more than any WHL team because I really liked Korchinski and Schaefer. And this kid just kept catching my eye. He's a 2002, so, you know, he's supposed to be one of the better players, but he may have been the top player in the WHL this year. Just always around the puck, really smart, put up great points both regular season and in the playoffs. So he's my real dark horse, and I think you know, he's going to help out Laval very soon, and I think he could be Laval's going to be a powerhouse, I think, over the next few years.
Well, listen, you must think so because, like you just said, you put together a top 30 list of Montreal Canadiens players, prospects under the age of 23. Let's bring up that chart. We're going to get to some of your questions pretty soon. Slafkovsky, Suzuki, Doc, Caulfield, Gooley, Mezar, Mayu, Beck, Barron, Ylonen, Kapanen, Roy, Hudson, Primo, Harris, Trudeau, Jackeye, Heineman, Kidney, Farrell, Tuck, Fairbrother, Raphael, RV Pinard, Norlinder, Biondi, Smilanic, Misak, Dobish, Deco, Rohrer, Engstrom, and Pitlick. There's your list.
That is impressive. You know, there's kids after 20 that I think on that list that have NHL potential all day. So, I mean, maybe I'm a bit, you know, the prospects that you follow the most, maybe you're a little biased about, but
yeah,
that's the best list. That's the deepest crop of Canadians prospects since the 80s, probably.
So I ran into a gentleman earlier today, and he said, Tony, I coached for a long time. I scouted for a long time. I'm a big fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. Kirby Dach is not a good player. He told me he is not a good face-off guy. He doesn't have very good work ethic. He's not the greatest skater. He said, Tony, this trade will not work out. He's not very good. And I looked at him and I said, let me ask you a question. He said, what? I said, in my line of work, do you think I'm good? He looked at me and he said, oh, I think you're great. I said, thank you. In my first 3 years, I wasn't very good. He said, there's a difference. You were a hard worker. Kirby Dach doesn't work hard on the ice. You were concerned about Shane Wright's work ethic when he didn't have the puck, his lack of engagement, not getting back. This gentleman said to me, if you're like this when you're 21, you usually don't change at 22. He's very concerned about Kirby Dach. Are you?
Yeah, well, that's not my scouting report. He's a very good skater. For that, right? You know, I'm sorry, but if he thinks that Kirby Dach is at 6'4" and the fluidity that he skates with and the power isn't a good skater, then like I don't know how much credibility he has to, you know, just to be honest with you, Tony, as far as that goes.
What do you think of the lack of production for a guy who played with Kane and DeBrincat and played for a team that you would think on the top two lines? I mean, the guys were given some liberty. I mean, those are not big numbers.
No, he didn't put up good numbers this year. That's for sure. At 20 years of age for the majority of the year. I mean, KK was the same way. And I still don't think, you know, we'll see with KK, but I still think that there's untapped offensive potential there. I know what it's like. These kids, 2021, asked to play a top two center role in the NHL. There aren't many that can do it. You know, it's rare. So he got thrown into the fire, and I think he was still recovering from that wrist injury, and he was never 100% last year. One of the reasons why he wasn't that good on faceoffs, but he's a very good skater, very good puck skills. Andre Tourné, like if you ever get Andre on and ask him about him sometime, he loved Kirby Dach when he had him at the under 18. Said, wherever you want to play me, coach, wing, center, doesn't matter, I'll play. And he said he just loved his attitude, and he was the captain before he got injured of the Team Canada at the World under 20s there at the World Juniors. So, you know, Hockey Canada didn't have any issues with his character. I don't have any issues with his character. I think he's going to have a bounce back year this year and surprise a lot of people.
All right. Why don't we do this? Let's get to the questions. I think you just you made some people breathe a little bit easier now. Why don't we get some questions? All right. Tony Lafreda. I love Tony. Tony's a gentleman. Tony, many believe that the Habs had a great draft. The Athletic graded them at A+ tops, but the French media is all over them for ignoring the Quebec junior hockey. Any thoughts, Grant? I'd like to comment on that, but why don't you go first?
Well, I think it's kind of, you know, I mean, same old, right, Tony? New chief scout who happens to be Martin Lapointe, you know, where do you think he's from?
Bill St. Pierre.
Well, I mean, Trevor Timmons got hecked for not picking guys from the queue. They get a guy who's from the queue, you know, Quebecois, picking new management. And what do? Well, you don't pick guys just for the sake of picking guys. They're doing the exact same thing that Trevor and his staff did in Bergevin. They picked who they thought were the best players when it was their time to pick in the draft. You can't go by locality and language, and you just can't.
Grant, for me, it's very easy. All right. If the Canadiens miss out on a player from the queue or a Quebec-born player from the queue, if they miss out, it's their mistake, right? They missed out, it's their mistake. But anyone who intentionally thinks that the Canadiens are going to close their eyes to players in the queue, especially if they think the player is good and the player can help them, you have to be an idiot to think that way, right? Now, having said that, look, I do think there are players the Canadiens missed out on from the queue in previous years that if they could have a do-over, they probably would. But sometimes it just doesn't work out. If you're picking 33 and then you end up trading your next pick, or 31, you end up trading, and you know what, all of a sudden 20 or 30 picks later and somebody gets, you'd have to make a trade to move up 6, 7, 8 spots. And sometimes to make a trade to move up to a couple of spots, what you have to do is you have to end up trading 2 picks to end up getting one just a couple of spots better. It doesn't always work out, Grant.
Oh, Bergevin never traded up anyway, whether it was for a Quebec player or anybody else. And I mean, they've missed out on players from every league, not just the Quebec League. You can't look at it that way, you just can't. I know Trevor quite well, and I know that he had no bias, and he wished that there were better Quebec players. It's the same thing this year. Like, how many went in the top 60? There weren't many.
Well, I think what caught people's attention is that Anaheim grabbed, pardon me, was it 3 of them that they grabbed? And Martin Madden Jr. has a reputation, I think, of doing pretty good at the draft. I mean, I think he's drafted some players. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's pretty good at what he does. So I think a lot of people saw Anaheim draft a couple and say, well, if they went to get them, why didn't the Canadiens?
Well, I mean, if Gaucher would have been there at 26, the Canadiens may have taken him. If, Lamoureux and Luno had been there, at, I don't know, 50, or where did they pick, 62? They'd have taken either. I mean, I didn't have either of those guys ranked ahead of Beck. So you don't take them. You take Beck because he's the guy that's highest on your list. Simple.
Yeah. By the way, if my kids ever get drafted in whatever sport they ever make it pro, if my wife wants to kiss me the way the Lamoureux kissed, I mean, did you see that? It was on social media. Did you see that?
I missed the kiss.
Oh, you missed it? Jesus. Yeah. That was really something.
Good for them. I heard all about it, and that, hey,
they have a 17-year-old and good, they're still very affectionate with each other. I think it's a beautiful thing. I have a 17-year-old, and for me, affection in my house is if my wife says good morning or good night.
Yeah, Lamoureux. I have to think it had something to do with the name, maybe.
It's a very romantic name. There's no doubt about it. Anyway, all kidding aside, what a beautiful moment for Maverick Lamoureux and his family. They were just so excited. Once again, it's a dream come true. We talk about it, but I think the greatest thing of the draft, for me, it's the greatest thing every year, is the reaction from the kids and the families. The reaction from Slafkovsky when he went number 1, he was surprised. The reaction from his mother, who was just elated, and it was his parent. I thought the draft was amazing. And by the way, a lot of people felt the draft was amazing in Montreal, and they're talking about having the draft in Montreal more frequently and more often, which would be nice. Mind you, next year is Nashville, Tennessee, by the way, and I've never been there before, and I hear it's beautiful, so it would give me a reason. Let's get to more questions. The first one, by the way, was not only from Tony Lofreda, from Senator Tony Lofreda. Alexander Moy says, if it wasn't for the trade with Doc, who looks like a bust, worse than KK, do you still think the Habs would have picked a boom bust winger like Uri over the safer pick like Shane Wright? Yikes.
Okay, well, I don't think that Wright's the safer pick. I read that was a misconception as well, that he's some great defensive player. First of all, he's not. That's what he's got to work on. I don't know that Shane Wright's even going to be a top 2 center. He might go to the wing. So as far as who's the safer pick, I mean, the 6'4" kid with the speed, with the hands, with the grit, with the competitiveness, he's as safe as they come. There's not a safer pick in the draft, Tony. He already proved himself against men. So I have to respectfully disagree with Alex. And as far as the bust, he's been a little negative there, I think. Kirby Doc is not a bust. I mean, 21 years of age, even KK, and I know I've defended him 100 times, but he's still young. And I mean, they signed him to an 8-year contract. Trocheck's leaving. They plan on moving him up. It may not be till second line center this year, but still in a year or two is going to be he's going to be replacing him. He's already almost got as many minutes as Stahl. So they plan on having him as a second line center, which tells me that, these guys are smarter than I am. They must think that they must still think that he has a load of potential. So as far as him being a bust, it's still too early. It really is. And as far as Doc being a bust, I just let the kid play and let's see.
Back to the questions, and once again, it's great. We all have opinions on the draft. We're going to have a much better idea in 4 years from now, even better idea in 7 years from now. And we'll know for sure in about 10 years from now who had the better career and stuff like that. For now, you know what? Let's have confidence in Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, Vinny Lecavalier, the entire, Nick Bobrov, and the entire Marty Lapointe and the staff. Let's see what happens. MJV says, can you ask Grant what's his analysis of Kirby Dach in his draft year, if he remembers? Grant, where he went as the number 2, he went 3rd overall.
Yeah.
He was the second center to go, right? Because Jack Hughes went 1.
Yeah.
Who's a center, and Capo Caco, who's a winger, went number 2.
Yeah. No, I had him top 5. I thought he was a really good prospect. That's when there were some concerns with his consistency, in how competitive he was.
Yeah.
And I think he had to figure some things out. Second half of the year, that really came on, and the size, skating, skill package on a 6'4" center, that always appeals to the scouts. So he was high on my list, like I say, top 5, and he ended up going top 3. So
what's interesting, Grant, is that Jeff Gordon passed up on him because he went with Capo Caco at number 2, correct?
Yeah. So but I mean, Caco looked, he looked like a future star. There were some that even thought he might go ahead of Hughes at some point. So yeah, I mean, and it's early. Caco showed signs in the playoffs that he's coming on. Same with Lafreniere. Both those guys are going to be really nice players.
You get the feeling that it's Kent Hughes who's a big Kirby Dach fan here, and that's what I would think anyway. Then again, you know what? Who's the special advisor to the general manager? Is Vinny Lecavalier. If there's one guy who knows a thing or two about a 6'4" centerman, it's a former 6'4" centerman.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there are a lot of similarities in their games, really, and Doc has loads of potential. I mean, I was surprised that Chicago gave him up. I mean, I love Romy, special spot in my heart for him, but I don't know that he has top pairing potential on a contender. He's not going to be a big point guy, not a biggest playmaking assist guy, I don't think, and so he's ideally a second pairing punishing defenseman. So I mean, Doc has a chance to be the top center on the Canadiens. Like, he could even outproduce Suzuki, perhaps. So,
well, according to the experts in their respective draft years, Suzuki went 13th in his, and Doc went 3rd in his.
Right.
So you would think that most experts thought that Doc was going to be the one that was going to have the better career. Now, as we know, it doesn't always work out that way, right?
No, of course not. But I mean, the potential's still there, and you don't. At 21 years of age, you still have to wait. You give it 5 years, and then you have a better idea, really good idea on a player. And after 3 years, especially if they play starting at 18, like 3 years of pro, it's still too early.
Grant, why don't we do this? Let's do rapid fire. Let's try to get to as many questions as possible here.
Sure.
Let's try and get to about 10 of them. Let's go. Ishmael Miller Clark. Ciao, Tony. Question for you two. Do you think that Hughes was a little impatient with trading Romanov? I believe that it was Kent Hughes' first mistake. I know all GM make mistakes. What's your take, Tony? Grazie, compari. I like Alexander Romanov a lot, but I agree with Grant's assessment. If you're not going to be a defenseman who's a great stick handler, a great puck carrier, very dynamic, very offensive, you better be the best shutdown defenseman that you can be. If you're neither, and you're just a young man who does everything good and plays with energy and hits like a truck, you're going to end up being a second pairing defenseman. So at best, you'll be a number 3. At worst, you'll be a number 4. There's a lot of number 3s and number 4s that are available. It's easier to find those guys than it is to find a number 2, 6'4" right-handed center, or a 1B, or a guy that even can be a number 1. So as much as I would have loved to have seen Romanov stay, I take a look at if both become the best they can be, a guy like Doc would have more value on the marketplace, because if he becomes his best, he becomes a number 1 centerman. If Romanov becomes his best, he probably becomes a number 3. That's my take. I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, if I may, Tony, just to add, like there's so many good left defensemen in the Canadian system. You know, Gouli, I think, is going to be better than Romanov. You know, and there could be 2 or 3 other left defensemen that end up being as good or better. So they made the trade from a position of strength, and they have replacements that could well be better. Gouli could be. I wouldn't be surprised if Gouli is better than Romanov was last year when he steps in this year. So that it's not like they're harming, you know, that position because they're loaded there.
Next, Christian Gendron. Hi guys, great show. My question is for Grant. If Doc was on his draft at 18 years old, he'd be drafted at what number? If Doc was
year.
on this draft, okay, I got it now.
Okay, this year. Oh, I hate those hypotheticals, Tony. They're really hard. You know, it's really hard to. I mean, it's I mean, it didn't happen, right? But
I think what he's asking is, if you take a look at Wright, you take a look at Cooley, and you take a look at Kirby Dach. Would Kirby Dach be ahead of any of them?
It would have been that would have been a big debate, you know. I think probably Doc would have been number 2 in this draft class because of his size. You know, he could be the big first line center with the size potential. He'd have probably gone 2, maybe 1.
All right, next. Nick Lariviere. Hey, Grant, why was Slafkovsky's points per game so much lower than most top prospects in Liga in their draft year? Did he really get that much less ice time? Which is ridiculous for his skill set. I was watching some clips, and Pierre Maguire said on Sportsnet that when Slafkovsky, and he said he had a chance to watch him live and on tape, when he was playing in Finland with TPS Turku, that he was kind of buried on a third line. But when he played with Slovakia, they gave him top minutes. And what he loved about it is that he asked the men around him to give him the puck because he would take charge. And when he did get the puck, he did take charge.
Yeah, well, I do know that whoever the Slovakian coach was on his, the Finnish coach compared to Craig Ramsey, I'll take Craig Ramsey, you know, as far as player evaluation goes. He ended up putting him on the first line, you know, both the Olympics and at the Worlds. But I disagree. Like, there's a bit of a misconception. Like he said, first of all, most draft eligible Finns don't even play in Liga, you know, let alone most of them having better stats in Liga. It's less than 10 players in history in Finland that had better stats in Liga in their draft years. Now, is there more than 10 CHL players in history that had better stats in their draft years than Wright did?
Yes.
There's 100. There's 100. So I'm not sure why that became a thing. You know, it's 3 guys in history have had noticeably better stats in their draft years, draft eligible Finns. 3. I mean, you can go Lemieux, Crosby, you know, Lafleur, you know. Was Wright anywhere close to those guys in his draft year with his points? Of course not. He was maybe half of that. So, I mean, you got to put it all in perspective. Liga is a very low-scoring league. He didn't put up great stats as a 17-year-old Slovakian playing in a men's league in the first half of the year. That's right. But was he supposed to? I mean, it's happened 3 times in history. So I think a lot that's been overblown. And as you say, yeah, he didn't play an offensive role. They didn't give him offensive minutes. He was with a couple of guys who are never going to be anywhere close to the NHL. Like, he didn't play with any drafted players, the NHL drafted players. So, I mean, when it's all put into perspective, after he came back from the Olympics, he played 10 regular season games. He scored 4 goals. 2 Finnish prospects in history averaged more than 0.4 goals per game in Liga. So if you go by how he played after, he was 5th on his team in playoff scoring. He was top 20 in playoff scoring. And that one really gets me, is why do people always look at the regular season stats and not at the playoff stats? Shouldn't it be the opposite? I put way more emphasis on what a player does in the playoffs than what they did in the regular season.
Of course.
But everybody just brings up the regular season
and
stats.
the games are a lot tighter. There's so much more on the line, of course, and for many reasons.
Every NHL scout, you put more emphasis on the playoffs. And right in the playoffs,
yeah,
he scored 3 goals, which is 6th best or 7th best on his team. Slafkovsky, points-wise, was 5th best on his team in the playoffs. Okay. Goals against in the playoffs, Wright was on for 25 goals against in 11 games, which is remarkably high. Like, that's 2.3 goals a game. There were 8 goalies that had a bet that were on the ice for less goals against, and they played 60 minutes a game. Slafkovsky, in his last 38 games playing against men, was on the ice for 19 goals against. 38 games. So it's just like
that's a goal every other game against.
Right. So I mean, people are only looking at Slafkovsky's 31 games, 28 which came when he was still 17 years old, playing in the men's league, playing in a different country. I mean, yeah, he didn't have great stats, but I think there's way too much emphasis on that and not on the fact that he was a tournament MVP of the Olympics, and
which is awesome.
And was top 11 in scoring at the Worlds against men. There's people that just want to look at
NHLers.
There's people that just want to look at those 31 regular season games, and it just, for the life of me, I can't understand why.
Yeah, listen, I think they're both going to be great, and that's what I wish for them. All right, one more. Let's just do 2 more. So this way, 2 more. All right. Sean Edwards, you think Slafkovsky will end up the best player in the long run out of Cooley and Wright?
Is that for me, I guess?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, ranked first overall, so yeah, I think he'll end up being the best player. I think he's the player that's going to help the team most at playoffs, and that to me is why you draft a player. It's the one that's going to help you win a playoff time.
Last one. Hi, Tony. Question for Grant. Do you think Philip Messar will be a top 6?
That's a good question. It depends, obviously, on other prospects too. I thought Ylonen would be a top 6, and now I'm starting to wonder that.
Doesn't look like it. No,
as you build prospect depth, there's going to be guys drafted top 40, top 50, that you hoped would be top 6 guys that aren't going to make it because you have great depth. But yeah, that's his upside. And if he doesn't make it as a top 6 on the Canes, it's because they have a great depth. I mean, Biondi is a good looking prospect. A lot of these guys, Farrell. I mean, that list you brought up. There's a lot of, and a centerman could move to the wing. Like Kapanen could end up going on the wing.
Yeah.
Because now they got Beck, and I mean, those 2 guys. I thought Kapanen. I mean, he's going to be the first line center, I think, on Finland in the World Juniors. Usually that equates to at least a third line center in the NHL. But Beck's going to be a third line center too. Well, maybe Kapanen ends up going on the wing, and maybe he beats out Mezar for a spot down the road. You
Yeah.
can never predict those things.
Grant, we said it before, but we'll say it again. Once again, if you want to have a chance to see some of these young players in the Canadian system, development camp opens tomorrow, runs over the next 3 days, I believe. Was it Monday? Was it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and is it Wednesday as well? I'm taking a look here. Do you have it? Do you have it, Grant?
Sorry,
Development camp is, the Canadians actually put it out there before. I'm going to see if I could find it here. All right. Okay. Development camp is, all right. Starts on Sunday. All right. The on-ice sessions will start Monday. So from July 10th to July 13th. Monday, the on-ice session starts on Monday, July 11 at 12:15 p.m. So Monday, July 11 at 12:15 p.m. And then on Tuesday, July 12th, and on Wednesday, July 13th. You can go check it out. It is actually, Tuesday is going to be at noon and Wednesday at 11:30. All right. So tomorrow, off-ice workouts. Monday, on ice, both groups, 12:15 p.m. Tuesday, on ice, both groups, 12 p.m. Wednesday, both groups on ice, 11:30 a.m. And the good news, Grant, the sessions are open to the public. So if you want to go check it out, you can do it. Once again, if you love the Sick Podcast, not like it, but love it, actually, comment with the word sick, and then we'll know how much you really love us. We'll feel the love. Grant McCagg, I said at the start of the show that you've been on the opposite. You've been on the receiving end of quite a bit of hate, I would say, on social media, especially Twitter. A lot of people weren't buying what you were selling and didn't want to accept you saying Slafkovsky was the number one pick in the draft class, and now he is. And I know a lot of people have already apologized to you, but I thought you deserve the benefit of the doubt to be one of the first guys to comment on it. So here you are. You sell your draft guide every year. That's how you make your living at recrutes.ca. You put in a lot of work, and I think the past couple of days was a very, very big couple of days for you and recruits.
Yeah, for sure. I was having second thoughts, even keeping doing this, keeping going with this actually. But yeah, it feels a bit like retribution, and people have been very nice. A lot of people that have apologized, and ton of people actually. And I understand to a certain degree the passion and everything, and you get told for 3 years that this is the guy, right? And I understand all that, but certainly I never make a draft list with any personal, vendettas or anything. I just try to get the word out there who I think's going first, and I know I was hard on Wright, and I thought people needed to be informed, because it just seemed like I didn't want to go through. I don't want a prospect to go through what KK went through. As far as the just how much pressure, negativity that there was towards him when the pick was made, and it never died down. And I really don't want a top Canadiens prospect to go through that again. And I felt that I had to inform people that, hey, there's a really good chance that Wright may not go to the Canadiens, So warm up to it, warm up to that fact, warm up to the kid that goes first if it's not right. And I think people, there were a few boos, not a smattering of boos when he was picked, but by the time, it had sunk in, the reality had sunk in, and
yeah,
they learned they were getting Doc as well, and it made more sense for people because that was the narrative that they had to get a centerman, right? So they were quite warm, the applause and that later when that was pretty cool. I really liked that.
Hey, you have a great weekend, and if all goes well, look, development camp once again on ice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, And then on Wednesday, July 13th, unrestricted free agency opens up. So we're going to be busy with that. I think Brunchen will be back. We'll keep you posted, but I think we're actually going to be back. We're going to do it next week on Saturday. Until then, we're going to keep on uploading episodes. Of course, subscribe to our Facebook group and subscribe to our Twitter channel at The Sick Podcast, our Instagram at The Sick Podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. So follow us on all social media platforms, subscribe on YouTube, and check out Grant McCagg at recrutes.ca. Grant, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Tony.
Ciao. There you have it. Grant McCagg. What a sick couple of days. Have a sick weekend. I'm out of here.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature, and Lacage. If the last time you went to Lacage was when the Habs won the cup, it's time you went back to Lacage. The menu will surprise you.